trying to see if we can come stand next to him.
You can learn. Oh, thank you.
Well, I see no reason why not to get started, I guess.
Do it!
Yeah, let's do it. My name is Jonathan Simon. I have a local blog called lightningoffense.com, which is about nerdy stuff going on in the Valley. So by raise of hands, well, let's just say you may get more out of this if you're kind of a nerd, if you're into some nerdy stuff. If not, I'll try to be as clear as possible, but there may be some obscure nerdy references going on every once in a while. I'm going to try and keep this somewhat interactive, so I hope everybody's comfortable with that. The format really is I'm going to try and bring up kind of a thought, explain what I think about it, maybe give out some examples of people I think that are doing it well, and then ask you guys for examples that you can think of on certain things. So please don't be shy, or I'll get awkward up here. My topic is turning followers into browncoats. So let me just start by saying, in March of 2011, has anybody heard of a blog called IO9? They're part of Gawker Media. They're kind of one of the big nerd blogs. Okay, so IO9 decided to do what they call March Movie Madness, and they decided, you know, we have lots of followers. Let's get everybody voting. Let's see if we can determine the greatest science fiction movie of all time. Okay. So they put it. They got all official. It's hard to see on here, but they lined up the classics into brackets, and every day you could go in and vote, and the winners would advance just like any other tournament. And I thought that was kind of funny. And like some of you already have a few, are probably thinking of a few winners. Anybody can think of, what do you guys think the greatest science fiction movie of all time is? Any thoughts? Star Wars?
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner? Yeah, I was convinced it was going to be, I'm like, okay, it's going to be Empire Strikes Back versus Blade Runner, like for sure, right? So I'd already called it, my armchair nerd. So, like I said, on the left hand of the side of the tournament, no surprise to everybody, The Empire Strikes Back was just dominating. Like nobody could come close to beating The Empire Strikes Back. And on the left hand side, it actually came down to Star Wars: A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back before it got down to this is the one on the right. And The Empire Strikes Back won, which it should have. And then a really interesting thing started happening on the right-hand side. An obscure movie based off of a canceled TV show named Serenity started winning. And not just winning, but winning a lot. And I mean, this awkward movie poster and all, which does one of my pet peeves. That you can't see it, but that moon up there has stars in front of it. That drives me crazy. Photoshop. Anyway, so Serenity started winning, and first it beat Spider-Man, which is like, okay, I would consider it, easy win. Spider-Man shouldn't win anything. Sorry, Toby. But then it beat Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which kind of caught my attention. Then it beat one of my favorite movies of all time, Back to the Future. Then it beat The Terminator. And then it was up against Blade Runner. And I was like, okay, see ya, Serenity. I consider Blade Runner one of the most beautiful films ever made, science fiction or not. It is just a brilliant masterpiece. I wish that magic could just kind of come back in something new. Anyway, believe it or not, Serenity won against Blade Runner, and it came down to, this is from their blog, I just pulled this straight from their blog. It came back to The Empire Strikes Back versus Serenity as the greatest film of all time. So I think you guys can probably see where I'm going with this. Can you guess who won?
Serenity.
I don't know, can you read that? 13,000 votes to 10,000 votes. Serenity won the greatest science fiction film of all time. Okay, so I started theorizing. Maybe, let's run through, what happened here, right? How did that happen? Okay, possibility number one. Serenity's a better movie than Empire Strikes Back. That's easily debatable, right? I just threw up the Rotten Tomatoes score because I needed a visual for this. I would agree that Empire Strikes Back deserves 97. I would give Serenity a little higher, but I still wouldn't, I don't know if I would call it the greatest film of all time. So, okay, well, what about Maybe Serenity just has more fans than Star Wars. Also did not seem very plausible. So I can't kind of get to a third conclusion. That fans of Firefly are they're just crazy. They're rabid. They love their show. They love their movie. So just to kind of like bring it all back, Jeff Moriarty, you may have met at this conference. He does a thing called Phoenix Ultimate Geek Smackdown at the Phoenix Comic Con, and I helped him a little bit with that. And I noticed that where I really started theorizing about this was that we would put two people up on stage, we'd each give them a side in some kind of stupid, nerdy argument just for fun, and then we'd let them debate, right? And then the audience would choose which one, because that's what nerds love to do. We love to debate things that don't matter at all. And so, and I started noticing it didn't matter who you put up against something from Firefly. Firefly would always win. The audience would always cheer louder for the Firefly side. We had Han Solo up against Captain Mel Reynolds from Firefly, and it didn't matter who debated better. The Firefly side would always win. We actually had a conversation where we decided to only put Firefly against Firefly stuff because of the awesome power of the fans. So the whole point of this conversation I'd like to have today really is to kind of decide, what did Firefly do right? Like, what is so special about Firefly? But more than that, what is it that we can actually like apply? What can we do with our followers, with our blogs, with our podcasts? What are some things that we can actually? Come on in. Sorry. Oh, it's all right.
We're in the right spot. I think we're in the right spot. Sorry.
Nerdy stuff. We're good. So for the uninformed, what is a brown coat? So to make this simple, I went to the Urban Dictionary online, and I found 3 definitions. I only knew the first 2. Apparently there are 3. I found the third one's pretty fascinating. There are 3 definitions for what a brown coat is. The first one is that a brown coat is a rebel in the Firefly Serenity universe. In other words, a wholly awesome person. Basically, in this TV series Firefly, there are 2 factions, or there were 2 factions. There was the Alliance, which is kind of like the Empire, the big dominant government, and then there was kind of a rebellion against it, or a faction that didn't want to join with them, and they called themselves Browncoats. They were the rebellion, they wore Browncoats, and they called themselves Browncoats. So the second definition is a fan of the series Firefly. This is what a fan calls himself, kind of like a Trekkie or a, I can't think of my head, but they call themselves Browncoats. And then this third one is kind of my favorite, because I think it kind of adds to my point. They actually have a verb, to make a movie based on a TV show, largely due to the impressive number of enthusiastic fans. Which is what happened. Like, I almost feel like Fox was just like, okay, Firefly fans will make a movie, so you guys can leave this alone.
Canceled TV show.
Yes. So here's a question: can anyone think of a recent movie or a movie coming out that just got brown coated based off of the canceled TV show?
Arrested Development.
Yes.
Arrested Development. They're making a movie of Arrested Development because the fans are so rabid. I kept myself a fan of Arrested Development.
He also Farscape did the same thing.
Really?
Yeah,
They
made a miniseries.
Was it good?
But, yeah, but they and it was canceled, and they made the movie like 2 years afterwards.
Yeah. Perfect except because of the fans, or just yeah. So this happens a lot. I know when Veronica Mars got canceled, the fans were sending Mars bars to the executives all day long every day to try and save the show. It happens a lot. But the Firefly fans, I'm going to say flans a lot, actually pulled it off. So one of the things I tried to kind of keep this presentation somewhat entertaining and to prove a couple of points is I pulled some clips from Firefly, some of my favorites, maybe to kind of either prove a point. This is the moment when I fell in love with this show. This is like my favorite moment of the entire show, and it's from the pilot. I know they aired them out of order, which we'll talk about later. But this is from the actual pilot. Let's see if we hopefully you can hear it.
You ruined her too, you know. This is the thing I see you're incomprehending. Everyone on the ship, even a legitimate businesswoman like her lives can be snatched away because of that Fed. You got a solution for that? You got a way around? I don't. Comes time, someone's gonna have to deal with him. That should be you. But I don't think you got the guts. And I know you don't have the time. What do you mean? Kaylee's dead.
there's just something about that scene that was so perfectly done that like, that was the moment it just pulled me into the show and said, I want to go with this crew, you know, throughout this solar system, and I want to go where they're going. I want to follow these guys and be a part of their team. So here's kind of the first thing that I thought of to talk about that I think that we can learn from Firefly. That's Chinese for Firefly right down there, if anybody's curious. I needed kind of something to mark like the big points. It's different than others. So the first thing that I want to talk about is being unique. This is kind of like a typical reaction even of me sometimes. Oh look, another blog. There's, have you guys heard of Riff Tracks? Yes. They make fun of movies. So they did like a terrible one of Tron, where they like outsourced it to a couple of other comedians. And but I watched it anyway. And there's this scene where like the camera's zooming in over the city, and there's like all these thousands of points of light. And one of the riffers says something like, all those dots represent all the blogs in the world. And there's like a couple beacons, like maybe 3 or 4 that are shining up, and those ones shining up are the ones that matter. and as a blogger, I was like, oh crap. It really stuck with me that there really are like millions and millions of blogs out there. And that it is important to be unique. So let me ask you guys, why do you think that being unique is important to having enthusiastic fans? Any thoughts? I told you this was going to be pretty interactive. Good comments.
Well, they could, if you weren't unique, they could get whatever you're offering in other places.
Yeah, you'd be marginalized, right? Okay.
People like to feel like they're one of a kind and know something that everybody else doesn't.
I think you're right. I think people are attracted, they associate themselves, like I like unique things because it makes me feel unique as well. Good. Yeah, the thoughts? Yeah.
I think there's an element of an individual feeling like they discovered something that nobody else knows
Yeah,
about.
a sense of discovery. Okay. Sam?
It shows their interest. Like if they're writing about something that's unique, it's because they're passionate or interested about it and they're taking the time to care about what they're putting out.
Okay. Yeah, good.
I think authenticity.
So there's
The more that you have
authenticity
sort
with
of
uniqueness.
the norm of things, you're looking for the non-norm of things. And
Right.
something more authentic experience-wise.
Okay. So think about your own blog and think about like what makes your blog unique. Is it unique enough? Yeah, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say it reminds me of the line, I want to be unique just like everybody else.
Yeah. I always think of the Far Side comic of the penguin in the middle of the thousands of penguins, and he's just singing out, I want to be me. I love that one. Yeah, and I think that I am Kilo. I don't know your real name, but I know your Twitter name is that your real name, Kilo?
No, really it's Miles.
Miles.
His international name is Kilo.
I think you're absolutely right. One thing I like to do when I'm teaching is I kind of like take a definition and I flip it on its head. Like, okay, why is being unique important? Well, look at it if you're not unique. If you're not unique, you can't have energized fans. So let's talk about how you can be unique. And I think that this is just kind of a little formula I came up with that I kind of learned over time through blogging. That being unique sounds really hard, but it's actually pretty simple. And I call it finding identity through layers. You've all seen like a Venn diagram before. This one's way more complicated than anything I've ever dealt with. But basically the idea of kind of taking 3 or 4 elements, and if you merge enough of them together, you will end up being pretty unique. So let's talk about Firefly first. First and foremost, Firefly, their first layer is that they're a space opera. It takes place mostly in space. They fly around in a spaceship, right? But it's also a Western. Probably almost as much as it is a space opera. You could even argue that it's more of a Western than a space opera. I'd be willing to concede in that argument. I can't really see that picture, but that's it's got a gun. It's really dark. It's also a comedy. My mom's in the audience today, so I took the liberty of censoring it. Firm buttocks. One of my other favorite moments in this show. And when it's a comedy, it's a great comedy. But it's also a horror. If you've ever seen a scene with the Reavers, it's not just a horror, it's a freaky, it can be a freaky horror show when the Reavers come in. But it's also a heist show. Some episodes are entirely heist-based, and a little bit of romance for those that like a touch of the romance. Forbidden love, maybe even some of that stuff. So I'm going to talk about, Seth Godin talks about tribes, right? I'm going to talk about a tribe I recently joined. I just met Nikki, and I discovered her blog a while ago, and I felt like this is a perfect example of somebody who's mixing things up to find a unique identity. you haven't heard of her blog, Book Pairing, she'll take, instead of just, I kind of feel like you just want to write about books at first. You love books, you have a passion for books. But there's lots of blogs about books, right? So instead of just being a blog about books, either rating or reviewing or talking about what she likes about books, she decided to explore what goes well with books. And I'm taking some liberties because she's right here in the audience and kind of describing like what she does, but at least the way I interpret it. And so I think that she does this great job of taking this first layer of books and like almost grabbing everything else and seeing how it can tie in to add that second layer to make something unique. So maybe she'll talk about, you should read this book, Revelation Space by Alistair Reynolds, and at the same time, you should play this video game called Mass Effect, and that'll enhance the book experience, or that'll enhance the video game experience. They have basically the same plot.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
I remember the most fond memory I have of reading a book in high school was reading The Outsiders while listening to Tupac. I found that to have the music of that generation with the element of that lifestyle in that book very very intriguing.
Yeah, totally. That's a good one. So if you don't mind me picking on you, can you think of other book pairings that you've done? I know you talked about some at Ignite Phoenix. Some of your favorites though.
Yeah, I'm doing gift pairings right now. So putting ideas for what you should buy people for gifts and making it book centric.
Gotcha.
So for teachers, I'm putting one together. But another one that just came out is Night Circus, which is this fantastical novel, and it deals with the circus. And then there's a new album that came out by indie band Murder by Death that's the same thematic elements, and reading them together, they kind of echoed each other, and that became a really interesting pairing.
Nice. So I thought this was just a brilliant idea for a blog. And so for most of us, we're not going to be as big as Star Wars. We can't have that many fans of Star Wars, but we can have a small rabid group like Firefly. And I think that this is a really great example. So can you think of any other examples, blogs or brands or people that you feel like have just kind of mixed things together to create something unique? There's one on the tip of Sam's tongue, I can tell.
Well, there's a couple. It just depends upon how they mix. I think pretty much anything Joss Whedon does has that fandom. So Dr. Horrible, Angel, Buffy.
Yeah.
Avatar: The Last Airbender has been doing some of that.
Totally.
And Disney. Actually, Disney has that a lot. It depends upon where you look. I think they mix really well. I just learned today that there's apparently some people that will turn Disney, they'll make Disney shows into musicals. They're already musicals,
right.
But they'll live do it and they'll make it a musical. So now they brought in Star Wars into it because now they've merged. So there's
I've always thought there should be a Star Wars musical.
What?
I've always thought there should be a Star Wars musical.
That would be interesting. And now that Disney has it,
Yeah.
They had Spider-Man.
Spider-Man the musical did. Ended in tragedy, I think.
On that note, I was going to say
Yeah.
Africa's Cube is the mixture of puppets and adult comedy. So
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's a Broadway show if you haven't seen it. It's
I haven't even heard of that one.
awesome.
That's why I'm asking.
Right. It's a great
Yeah.
show. And it's a great mix of two very opposite things
Yeah.
that come together and make it great.
That's
Well,
awesome.
Star Wars and music, you already got the holiday special.
Is that Jefferson Starship or whatever? Yeah, I think I saw. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm thinking out loud, but I was thinking of it as a Ron White, Beauty is Embarrassing. Have you seen that? He's a fine artist who did a lot of work for Pee-wee's Playhouse, but he's also a fine artist and a painter. And he takes fine art and morphs back between his crafts and fine art and museum shows and videography and visuals and film. And he says he likes to put humor back into fine art. And he morphs through just an enormous amount of different genres and mediums, but his voice and his quirkiness shines through every single one of those perspectives.
Cool.
I would recommend watching it.
Awesome.
Beauty is Embarrassing.
Yeah, good.
It's something that goes with just about anything. Zombies.
Yeah, seriously, you can just.
It's kind of like the sriracha, yeah.
But those have been successful, is the thing, and they just take Pride and Prejudice, throw some zombies in, and they started a successful franchise. Aren't they doing a movie? Did they do a movie?
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Abraham
Yeah.
Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Vampires are a big thing.
I would even consider those lazy mixtures, but they're still unique and kind of successful.
Plants
I saw a
versus
couple
Zombies
more, and then
again.
I gotta keep moving.
Yeah.
Preston, did you have?
I think an interesting one, I know you've already brought it up, but is the Ignite franchise that really brings it dares to bring
things you don't normally
individual
put together,
passions that really don't have anything to do with each other, and present them. Not even. I mean, TechPHX is great too, but it's all tech type stuff.
Right.
Blog, and you have something like that brings things from all over the place and
Right.
puts them into one thing.
And it ends up being really memorable.
Yeah.
And the fans of Ignite Phoenix are really, really stalwart fans. Yeah. So I'm gonna move on. I was gonna tease you, Sam. I was asking my wife if she can think of like rabid fans, and she's like, Disneyland people, man. Disneyland people are crazy. And I was like, you ask a Disneyland person how many times they've been to Disneyland, what's their answer? This year? So now I want to talk about kind of how I'm trying, right? So with my blog, Lightning Octopus, blogging about local geek stuff, how am I trying? So when I first started this blog, actually I'll take it a step back. When I first wanted to, I knew I wanted to start a blog. And I knew I wanted it to be like about stuff that I like. And so I had like 6 months of posts planned out about stuff that I like. Movies that I like, and TV shows and books that I like. And eventually I was like, nobody's gonna read this thing. There's just, like I said, there's those million points of light on that city of blocks, and that's not interesting. So then I thought, well, what if I took Geek, which I like, and Arizona? After I went to Phoenix Comic Con, I kind of realized there's got to be way more stuff going on than just Phoenix Comic Con every year. So I thought, well, this could be a good mix. And it really was. I did some research, and nobody else was really. There was a couple of other really good blogs out there that were kind of like highlighting some Arizona stuff, but they're also talking about mainstream nerd news. But nobody was, had that laser focus. And so I dove into this, and this is kind of where I started out. And I was like interviewing artists and interviewing local artists and going to different things. And I actually started to get a little bit worn out. It was just so much for me. And I started paying attention, and I noticed that some posts got way more interaction and excitement and energy than others did. And I really loved doing interviews with artists and things like that, or local authors, but they would just almost always kind of go flat. But then I would post about 6 nerdy things to do this weekend, and it would just shoot right up. And so I kind of noticed that like the events, the activity, the getting out is really what people were latching onto. And so I kind of decided to narrow my focus and add another layer to my identity. And so recently I've really been focusing on Phoenix, geek, events. And ever since I kind of made that decision, the interaction on Facebook, the Facebook likes have gone up, the Facebook likes on my post have gone up, because it's just a little bit more focused. It's like really clear what's showing up. Nobody's expecting anything that's unexpected. And it's done really well for me. So there's always temptation. And I definitely give in to temptation every once in a while to kind of, I know a lot of marketers love the word niche, and they're like, you need to dedicate to your niche. And so I'm kind of fuzzy on that one. I think it's okay to push the button every once in a while and expand out, maybe share something personal or something fun. So I've learned a lot that a good presentation is supposed to have a tweetable quote somewhere in there. So I tossed in some tweetable quotes. Combining different things and doing them well makes you unique. Being unique energizes fans. Let's see. And I forgot to talk about the doing them well part. So it's not enough to do lots of different things and mix them together. You have to do all those things well. So I kind of had to make the conscious decision. If I'm going to talk about Phoenix, geek, events, I have to be good at Phoenix stuff. I have to be good at geek stuff, even if I'm faking it sometimes. I'm not a big comic book guy, but a lot of comic book stuff happens, and so I'll pretend that I'm a comic book guy. And Google it, go to Wikipedia, and try and make an obscure joke. Events, like I just kind of have to go out to events and feel like I can tell which ones are worth writing about, which ones are pretty commonplace. It's not uncommon for me to get emails like, hey, we're having a Magic the Gathering tournament on Saturday. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool that you thought of emailing me. At the same time, everybody's doing Magic the Gathering tournaments every weekend, every week. And if that's all I was writing about, and I forgot about yours after I read everybody's. So really try to do all those things well. And the fun thing is I've gotten passionate about all 3 of these things, way more passionate. I have fallen in love with Phoenix. Like, Phoenix is a great city. I've fallen in love with the people in Phoenix. And I think that Firefly, when it decided to be a space opera, western, heist, horror, romance, comedy, that somehow Joss Whedon did all of those well. Like, you laugh during the funny scenes. The Reaver scenes are freaky. The heist ones are thrilling and fun. Okay, moving on. I'm probably dragging a little bit. The second thing I think is important is to have style. Style is important. Firefly took a blend of Western, kind of a Western style visually with the space opera. I think style is pretty fun. But I think that, to me, Firefly's real style comes in its rhythm. Joss Whedon has this rhythm of getting really serious and then hilarious. And I think we saw that kind of in that first clip that I showed, of kind of building up the seriousness and then dropping like a funny one-liner. This is one of my other favorite books.
It's true that, yes, I don't think she's intuitive, Doctor. I think she's a reader. Psychic? Is that even remotely possible? You tell me. You've been studying what they've done to her. They definitely altered the way she reacts to things, even the way she perceives, but I'm not psychic, though? That sounds like something out of science fiction. You live in a spaceship, dear. So?
So self-aware. You live in a spaceship. But I mean, everybody thinks that at some point, during a science fiction movie when someone will freak out. That's not even possible. You're in a spaceship. But as you watch the show, you kind of fall into that rhythm. And I think if you watch the Avengers, I'm sure everybody, most nerds watch the Avengers, you can feel that style again. That building up, serious, dire, and then drop. The Hulk does something funny. And everybody, it really fits with his style. The other thing that Firefly does really well in its style is it is incredibly quotable. It's one of the most quotable TV shows, movies I've ever watched. And there's a lot of quotable shows out there like Seinfeld and Arrested Development. For a space opera show, it's pretty good. You're My Kind of Stupid. I'm Going to a Special Hell is one of my favorites. I love this one. This guy who tattooed "I aim to misbehave" across his chest. Kind of one of the more famous quotes of the movie. And then one of my personal favorites. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. I should have grabbed that clip. I'm so mad I didn't. It's such a good one. You guys, anyone know who this is? John Green. Who's John Green? He's an author.
Yeah, and a vlogger.
And a vlogger, yeah. A video blogger. John Green, if you've been on the internet in the last 10 years, I guarantee you have seen a John Green quote written over something. That's what everybody does on Facebook anyway, is they just take a picture and put a quote over it. You've probably seen one of John Green's quotes. He's incredibly quotable. His vlogs are amazing and hilarious, and he has a very, very rabid fan base. The funny thing is John Green writes young adult fiction, but he doesn't write about vampires. He doesn't write about Hunger Games. He doesn't write about wizards or ghosts or anything. He writes about intelligent young adults, and his readers just love it. They love his stuff. It's incredible. But he is highly quotable. I'll get back to John Green later because I've always been so impressed. Everybody should know who this is. I hope you're all reading this guy's blog. Who's this one, Preston?
Seth Godin.
Seth Godin is one of the must-read blogs, I think, for anybody, whether you're in business or anything. Seth Godin's style, to me, he has a really unique style. He doesn't allow comments on his blog, which is like the #1 rule that everybody tells you is to interact with your fans and to be there and to answer all questions, and he doesn't. He's like, that's not what I want to do my blog for, so he just breaks that rule, and he just says what he wants to say, and then he moves on. He also has a really interesting blogging style in that I'd say 9 out of 10 posts that Seth Godin posts are maybe 2 or 3 sentences long. Like, it's really like a tweet most of the time, or maybe a Facebook post, but he puts it on his blog. It's not uncommon for Seth Godin to start a sentence in the subject and then finish the sentence in the post, and that's it. That's the whole blog post. And everybody reads his blog. Everybody loves it. And most of the time, it's pretty insightful and brilliant.
He's got it rounded as well because he brings people in and makes them part of the community. Once you say, I want to read your stuff, and he says, okay, come.
Yeah, he's really big on that.
Comment, but he brings you in.
Yeah, and he's a big innovator in getting information and passion to the masses. Like, he's trying to innovate publishing, and just change the way we think about publishing. Most of his blog posts are like that. They'll try and challenge the way that we're doing things. He hates the status quo. You can just feel that when you read. One of his favorite words is heretic. He just loves being a heretic. All right, any other examples you can think of like a blogger or someone with a style, maybe a brand? Gary Vaynerchuk, what's his style?
To me, he's very much out to just crush everything.
Yeah.
Like, just make it happen. Like, whatever you want to have happen, you just make it happen. But at the same time, he's not about being rude. It is about engagement. It's about building that relationship.
Yeah.
So you have to find that balance. But
yeah, and if you haven't heard of Gary Vee, he's a big like social media guy. He kind of took over his family's wine company in California when it was making like a couple million, and now it makes like bazillions of dollars. And he did it all using YouTube. You just get on YouTube and he'll drink wine and then he'll say what he thinks about it, but he's totally honest. And I think, I'm glad you brought him up, I think another part of his style is that he does his videos like in his office, and people will like walk around in the back and ask him questions in the middle of the thing. Like, he's just so open to like everybody. He lives that open door policy, I guess. He doesn't care if he's on YouTube. Like, you can come in and ask him a question, and people will. He's just such a funny guy. I got to meet him once, and I went instantly deer in headlights. I was like, he's an interesting guy. That's a great example. Anybody else you can think of that has a style?
I'd like to mention Pamela Slip.
Okay.
Post Gay Pharmaceutical Nation. I think she has a very unique style, definitely becoming from like the female entrepreneurship side. And she has a great blog post, and she references it several times and talks about the crack pipe versus wheatgrass mentality. And it's completely her, because she's definitely been this kind of person that's gone through teaching these smaller urban communities like how to handle themselves, but also doing like this large corporate stuff and kind of finding the right path.
Yeah.
So.
Good. So I got to keep moving. But just real quick, can someone answer the kind of another question I asked? Why do you think having a style would be important to having rabid fans? Having like a unique style is important.
Just create consistency.
Consistency?
I think it has a lot to do with authenticity.
Okay.
I think if you are constantly changing your style, it doesn't seem authentic. It seems like you're changing to fit with whatever is around you or whatever is currently present.
Which again, you can kind of get marginalized when you try and do that too much.
That familiarity, like you understand, like everyone knows who Joss Whedon is because of his style, not because they feel like you know. So now Joss is my friend, kind of. Yeah. My sister used to watch it, that 18 and counting, whatever the woman that has a million kids.
Yeah.
She felt like that woman was her friend.
She knows.
She just watching the show. She knew, she felt like that.
Seth Godin in his book Tribes, he talks about sports teams. And he's like, sports teams, the players are changing all the time. The managers are changing. They're changing the colors every once in a while. Who were the fans cheering for? He asked this question. Does anyone know what he says the answer is? He says they're cheering for themselves. That's what sports fans are cheering for. And I feel the same way. Like I said, when I wanted to get on that ship and go with these people, I felt like you kind of have that escapism. Like you feel like you want to go with these people. You like their style. You identify yourself with that style. I think it's important. Okay, so moving on. How do you find your style? If you don't feel like you have a really strong one yet, I really encourage two parts of this phrase. Know the rules first, know the rules, and then break the ones that you don't like. If you just go around not following rules, anybody can do that. But I think the real brilliant people in music and art are the ones that know the rules, the ones that can paint photorealistically, but then decide to be Picasso and paint Picasso. So learn the rules. So here's my style. I've thought about it a lot, and I've noticed this. I tend to overuse bullet points a lot. If you go to my blog ever, it's like bullet points. And parentheses. I love using parentheses in the middle of a sentence. I make up hyphenated words, which you can see down at the bottom. I use way too many adverbs. My English teacher would roll over in her grave. Her rule was, if you have to use an adverb, find a better verb. And I use them all the time, sometimes making them up. I love adverbs. And I use large-ish pictures. I was telling my brother-in-law Scott, when I do a blog post, I sometimes will spend just as much time finding the right big picture for it as I will writing the blog post, because it's important to me. It's like part of my style, and I'm really lucky that I married a photographer, so when we do go to events, she takes really great photos, and it's just become part of the style and that ebb and flow of my blog. And if I can't find a good picture and I give in. I just pick an okay one. It just bugs me for days. Having a unique style and voice draws people in. There's a scripture. If you guys are religious, the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. This is kind of a scriptural metaphor. The shepherd doesn't have to whip the sheep, get in the pen. He just speaks. They follow because they recognize his voice. They know him. All right, moving on. For the cause. It's really important if people are going to get energized, they have to have something to get energized about, something they can at least feel like they're involved in. Like if they're going to join Seth Godin's tribe to renovate, the publishing industry, they have to feel like they can do something about it, or at least come along the ride. You have to identify it, so you need a cause. And the first thing you need, if you want a cause, is you need to have.
Say that after Serenity.
Sorry, clip. I forgot there's a clip.
That's the war ended in that valley. Seems odd you named your ship after a valley you're on the wrong side of. May have been the losing side. Still not convinced it was a long one.
And defining line from Firefly, I love that one. Having a cause. So the first thing you need to have a cause is you need a villain. Nothing rallies people better than a villain. People love to hate stuff. And so at the risk of sounding negative, I'm not saying that we need to go out and vilify somebody, but having a villain is great. And I'm not going to pick sides, but look at the last election. How many people were voting against a villain? And they're still clinging to that idea of a villain days after. People love it, and it kind of really energizes a lot of people. Firefly has a really big villain. And one of the reasons that its fans are so energized and involved is because of 20th Century Fox. I found this meme. I thought it was perfect. One does not simply watch Firefly and then not hate Fox. Long story short, Fox started showing Firefly on TV. They aired it out of order. They put it in a death slot, and then they canceled it before it could even finish the first season. And everybody just gets so frustrated about that. Before I doing research for this presentation, I sent out some emails to some of my readers asking if they'd be willing to answer some Firefly questions. And I know this is death by PowerPoint because it's a lot of text. But I love this story. My husband is not a huge sci-fi fan, but he agreed to watch, probably just to shut me up about it. After the last episode, he said, okay, ready for the next disc? And when I told him that was it, no more, he was really upset. That's how people feel. You get to that last episode and you're like, what, that's it? People hate Fox because of this thing. It's wonderful. The other thing that I think Firefly did brilliantly with a villain is that it doesn't have a villain. There's different villains throughout the show, but the real villain, the overarching feeling of doom, is from the Alliance, which is kind of you kind of call them the Empire in Star Wars, this big government that wants to control everything in everybody's life and tell them how to think and live and everything. This is the Alliance ships kind of down if you haven't seen the show. So what I think was brilliant about this, actually, side note, this is one of the reasons, according to Wikipedia, one of the reasons that Fox did not like Firefly and canceled it early was that they hated that there was that whenever the crew of Serenity dealt with the Alliance, they always dealt with low-level, guys with gray hats on. There wasn't a Darth Vader. There wasn't, an Emperor that people could connect to. And I thought it was actually quite smart, and I want to talk about that. This is one of the great quotes from the beginning. The Alliance, I feel like the Alliance represents that. You can't take the sky from me. They're defiance against the Alliance. So my challenge to you is are you ready to bring your villain to life? So picking a guy and making him your villain, that would be a really douchey thing to do. So here's my advice. Find your problem that you're trying to solve and see if you can make it a villain. See if you can personify it in some way. It's worked really well for some people. Who knows who this is?
Mayhem.
Mayhem. I love these commercials, and I hate commercials. I think these are hilarious. The actor that does it does a great job. It's really well written. It's funny. But is it Allstate? Allstate has a villain, Mayhem, and they bring him to life, and you can pick on him, and you can make fun of him. So who can think of the other one I'm thinking of that has a villain off the top of your head? Anyone? Oh, I thought it was obvious. So Apple has a villain. They had this big doofy guy come out as a PC, and they call him a PC. And they give him, that look of contempt on the Mac's face is just totally perfect. I can't even believe you exist. But a lot of people don't remember, this isn't the first time Apple personified a villain. Can anyone think of you're shaking your head?
I remember the first commercial that you did. Yeah.
Yeah. famous 1984 commercial, considered one of the greatest commercials of all time. They decided to make boring, drab computer screens. No color.
The color.
Boring was their enemy, and they gave it a face, and they threw a hammer at its face, and it smashed it. Very powerful. Really gets people energized, gets people really wound up. Any other examples? I know I'm kind of running out of time. If anyone think of anyone, I'd love to hear them.
Geeks and sparkly vampires.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Geeks hate Twilight so much; it like brings them together. That's a perfect example. I should have thought of that one. That's brilliant. So here's how I'm trying to do it. With Lightning Octopus, I noticed something in my writing. I noticed that I would post 5 fun things to do for nerds this weekend, and at the top of the post I would say, poke boredom in the eyes and run out the door and have fun this weekend, or give boredom a wedgie, and get out and talk to your coworkers on Monday about something interesting that you did instead of I stayed home and watched something on Netflix. So boredom has kind of become one of my villains. My other is that this preconceived idea that Phoenix has no culture, that it's this barren wasteland, that nobody's willing to drive out and do anything. This is probably my alliance. This is like my Goliath that I am passionately trying to fight.
Light it.
So what does every villain need?
Good lighting.
Good story.
Time to go.
Just in the nick of time. What does that make us? Big damn heroes, sir. Ain't we just?
Good. Big damn heroes. Ain't we just? If you're going to have a villain, you have to have a hero. For the Firefly universe, the main hero that everybody can identify first and foremost with is this sexy character. Quite a sexy pose. Captain Mal Reynolds, captain of the ship Serenity. Again, death by PowerPoint. This is another answer I got from a reader that I thought was really good. Not everybody can be a hero in a big way. Sometimes you have to be a hero in small ways. Looking after your crew, never allowing your freedom to be compromised, not backing down when the odds are against you, and never giving up when you believe something to your core. Malcolm Reynolds will always be my captain. I love this answer because of that first sentence there, that sometimes you have to be a hero in small ways. Let's be real. Being a hero as Phoenix, Arizona's geek culture is not like a big thing. But it's a fun thing, and people love it, and people will really appreciate it. I thought that was great. The other big hero of Firefly is Joss Whedon. I was at a Riff Tracks Live, and before Riff Tracks Live goes live, they show joke trivia, and one of their trivia slides before the movie said, Joss Whedon, pause for thunderous applause. Pause for thunderous applause. Like, that's just how, and I wanted to pull the clip from Firefly where Lur crash lands into Comic-Con, and he's like, I'll defeat you all. Wait, Joss Whedon's here? People love this guy. They love Joss Whedon. It just brings everybody together. He brings everybody together. So you want to be the hero for your readers. That doesn't mean that you have to have superpowers. You don't even have to be amazing. Like, I'll be the first person to say I'm not even the world's best writer or even the best at social media, but I'm really trying to build up Arizona's geek culture. And really all they need is just kind of a shining beacon. So my biggest example of probably a hero, at least for a brand, is Steve Jobs. It's the first one that comes to mind. I know I've already done Apple, kind of a go-to. But everybody seemed to rally around this guy and his perfectionism and his ideas. And he was just like this champion for like making technology relatable and pushing it forward. People can argue whether he really lived up to that or not, but that's history. So we'll skip examples because we've got to get moving. I think I'm running out of time. So when I first started this blog, I was actually pretty like internet shy, and my wife would just harp me constantly. You need to put a picture of yourself up. You need to start saying who you are. And I was like, I don't want to. But as soon as I did, like that connection instantly started, and I started actually going to events, and people would shake hands, and they'd be like, oh, I like the octopus guy, and it like added to my passion. And it also, if I post a picture on Facebook of me wearing my Halloween costume, it'll get like 100 likes, as opposed to like other things. Like, people really do want a face to connect with, and I've learned that. You don't need to be like super amazing. This quick example, and this relates to doing everything well, doing many things and doing them well, and learning to do Phoenix well. I got up the courage to post one of my blog posts on Reddit, in Arizona, which is nerve-wracking if you know how Redditors are. And everybody was really nice, and there were lots of really nice comments. And one of the commenters was like, hey, thanks for posting about that zombie 5K run. So of course I'm going to post about that because it's hilarious and it's nerdy and zombies. And he says, do you know of any other runs or challenges going on in Arizona? And I didn't know that many. So I went and I looked. And I found some, and this is the Warrior Dash, picture from the Warrior Dash, and I posted some information for him, and he said, thanks. I think that kind of doing stuff like that is part of being a hero. Another quick example is I posted something about the Hunger Games, and some guy came on Facebook and was like, anyone who thinks the Hunger Games is original, I'm going to punch him in the face. And I chewed the guy out on Facebook. And everybody got behind me and was just like, oh, wait, you're a jerk. And I felt like a hero for a second. It was fun. A hero gives fans a face to identify and a human connection. She doesn't need to be amazing, just a beacon willing to persistently push the cause forward. Last but not least, rallying the troops, really getting people energized. I only have one point in here. I love this quote from Batman. It's one of my favorite quotes about being a symbol, but I'm going to move on. So, can anybody guess what Firefly's symbol is?
He is still sick with the damp lung. I made you the enclosed. Close. Enclosed to keep you warm in your travels. Hope to hear from you soon. Love, your mother. How's it sit? Pretty cutting, don't you think?
I think it's the sweetest hat ever.
Man walks down the street in that hat, people know he's not afraid of anything.
Damn straight.
If you watch Firefly, you know that the hat is the symbol of Firefly. It totally brings people together. They love it. I got a couple more pictures here of people wearing the hat. Here's one of my favorites that I found. Wedding. Some fans wore the hat as part of the wedding because they're fans of Firefly. This lady is my favorite person as the hat. And everybody knew who she was, right? Everybody kind of knew who this person was. It's the hat. It's Jean's hat from Firefly. And this is great because it was organic. I don't think he intended it to be a symbol. But it just, everybody latched onto it, became a symbol. Those are the best. Going back to John Green, does anyone know what this is? Nerd Fighters. That's right. John Green's fans call themselves Nerd Fighters, and they have this Nerd Fighter salute. And they'll just post pictures.